You go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. We are here on our weekly Wednesday webinar. My name is Clare Briglio. I'm the Communications and Business Disruption Resource Director for the Economic Development Collaborative. Sorry about that. I am seeing a little bit of question come up on the screen. Give us 1 second. Do we have everything settled, y'all? We're gonna wait a minute or two while people are joining. We had over 158 people register for this webinar, so I wanna make sure that we give people a chance to come in. Thank you for joining us today, the 13th. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're good on the technical end. Just a few housekeeping rules. As you're entering, if you don't already know, you are all muted. Your videos are not in operation either. If you have a technical issue, please use the chat feature and chat to the team that's working with me today, Emily and her team from Visionality. I'm so grateful for them for helping out, and chat your questions to them. And then if you have any questions during the webinar today that we'll be going through in a moment, we'll wait until the question and answer, or sorry, we'll wait until the question and answer period, and then I would invite you to type in your questions in the Q&A chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Wow, okay. Okay, so here we go. Today we're talking about federal funding. You've got federal funding, or maybe you haven't yet, or maybe you do have PPP and EIDL and you're wondering what to do. And I want to just say, first of all, I'm very grateful for everyone who's been attending these webinars. I know we've had quite a few of you return. Some of you may know me personally, but I just want to say thank you for those of you that have been watching week after week. I know it's not maybe not the best entertainment, but I know you're here to get questions answered, and we will do the best we can today to answer as many questions as possible. I also want to mention that if you are not an EDC client and you want to sign up for no-cost business consulting, you will need to go to our website, and I'll give you that information at the end of the webinar, to or call directly 805-409-9159. Call directly to set up an appointment with our business advising team. So if you've registered for this webinar and you think that you're going to get a call from a business advisor, there's just one more step. That's 805-409-9159, and it will be on the screen later, so you don't have to worry about writing it down now. But I just want to mention that beforehand. This isn't, you will not get a call from a business advisor unless you reach out to us specifically. And one more thing before we get started here, you know, if you've watched this before, you know I like to tell a little story before we get started. And I was just thinking, you know, this moment that we're in, this transition moment that we're in, and I was thinking about moments in time in history where maybe we were at a cusp of a new era and we didn't really realize it. And I'm thinking of like the Roaring 20s and the beginning of you know, the 70s or the 60s, and those movements that came out of those eras. And I'm sure at the very beginning, there were people that saw like signs of things changing, but they didn't know what was about to happen. And I think it's really important to recognize that we're not just moving into a new season, we're moving into an entirely new era. And I recognize certain things that are shifting in our environment, and you probably do too. But I want to add all those things up for you right now and say it's because we're moving into a new era. It's when Twitter says, from this day forward, forevermore, you are able to, you know, we are going to let employees work from home. Telecommuting is going to be just a part of how we do business. You know, those are signs that business functions, business operations, the way that we conduct ourselves in the business world is radically changing. And what's required of us in order to move into this new era without a lot of our own personal disruption or getting in our own way is a new mindset. new eras create new mindsets. I mean, think about all the things that came out of the 60s movement and the women's liberation movement and all of those things. They change the way we start to think about things. And I was thinking years ago, and it was from around 13 years ago, I was working for a lovely person, and it was one of my first jobs, and I thought, you know what, I'm always going to work environments, and I think I'm gonna make this better, I'm gonna do this. And I started leaving these like 25-page reports for this person, thinking like I was doing them a favor, thinking like, oh, we could offer these employee benefits, and it's not gonna cost us this much more as a company. And we could do this and we could do that. And they were charts and 25-page papers. I mean, these weren't small things. I worked on them like for hours and hours, and I thought they were just beautiful and very well done. I mean, I'm a smart person, and I would put them in this person's inbox, and I would never ever get a response. And I went home one day and I was just crying. I was like, I just can't figure out what's happening. Like, why is nobody listening to me? And I realized later, now that I look at that, and telecommuting was one of those things that I had said, like, we should do this. I mean, imagine if that company had responded then to creating a telecommuting policy for their company that would have been, maybe they did after all I left, but I don't know. But what would have happened if they were able to make that change then? How much easier would it have been for them to go through this disruption? But the thing is that I wasn't confronting a person. Like, it wasn't the resistance of a person that I was confronting. I was actually confronting a mindset of, it's always worked this way. Why are you trying to change the system? Let's just do it. If it's not fixed, if it's not broken, don't fix it. This is that type of mindset. When you encounter that within your own thinking, that's what you start to need to reconsider. And we're going to be talking about PPP and EIDL and federal funding, but what I'm telling you is if that funding isn't combined with a new way of thinking about your business model, about what you're moving into next, of how the economy is going to change, and in positive ways and in sometimes very painful ways, then we will not be able to move into this next era successfully as business owners. So thank you, Paula. We are moving into the presentation, and I'm just about to share my screen. Okay. And just a reminder, I'd like to remind everyone that is watching to keep the comments positive. Thank you very much, and we will get started here. So we are talking about, we have got federal funding. Now what are the best practices for spending and accounting for COVID relief funds? My name is Clare Briglio. As I mentioned, I'm the Communications and Business Disruption Resource Director for the Economic Development Collaborative. And I have worked through the Small Business Development Center as Communications Director and the EDC since the Thomas Fire and the Hill Woolsey Fire. I've been through multiple federal disasters, and here we go in another one. And I am going to be as transparent as possible to you today in terms of what I know and what are best practices for PPP and EIDL. And knowing that, what I'm going to give you today is as much as I know. The reality is the SBA has not released full parameters on what the forgiveness guidelines are for the Paycheck Protection Program. We're still waiting for that. So please bear in mind that we're still in a fluid situation. And I just want to mention that. So you are going to have to do your due diligence as much as I have to do my due diligence in finding solutions that work for you and finding answers that work for you. And that may mean speaking to your banker or speaking to your accountant, etc. So before we go any further, we do have a federal funding preparation guide. If you haven't applied for PPP yet, the federal government is still, SBA is still allowing for applications for PPP, and you can apply actually locally at Montecito Bank and Trust. They are accepting and encouraging applications. So if you haven't done so, I would encourage you to visit Montecito Bank and Trust or their website. You can easily find that information on the PPP loan application on their website. But just in case you haven't, just know that program is still open for applications. So first we'll talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. So remember, and this is going to be really important as we work through this material, the purpose of this loan program is employee retention. I'm going to say that again. The purpose of this loan program is employee retention, meaning that the way that this program was structured, and yes, sole proprietors and self-employed individuals are eligible to apply for PPP, but the goal of this program was to retain your workforce, was to make your workforce whole in one way or the other, whether you recently laid them off or maybe you had them leave during your employee during this COVID because they were impacted by COVID-19, whatever the case may be. The purpose of this program is to take money from the government and extend it to the workforce. This loan program is available retroactive from February 15th, 2020, so employers can rehire their recently laid off employees through June 30th, 2020. And note, at this time, because I've received several questions already about this, we are not aware of an extension on that date. So that may change, but at this point, we are not aware of an extension. The maximum loan amount is up to 10 million, as many of you know, and the loan is designed to be fully forgiven if the funds are used for payroll costs, interest on mortgages, rent, and utilities in the 8 weeks following the date of loan origination. And we'll talk about this later, but 75% is to be spent on payroll and 25% is to be spent on other eligible expenses. Now, before I move on, I just want to clarify that a number of the lenders that we have talked to have limited their loan funds or their lending to just cover payroll. So please be sure that you know and that you're very aware of the money that you've received from the lender, that it's for one purpose or the other and or both. So make sure that you are very clear on what your lended amount is for. All loans under this program should have the following identical features. So if you're working with a lender and that these are not the terms, please reconsider. The interest rate is at 1%, and that starts accruing immediately. So consider that if you are looking to hold on to the money for some reason and you are not going to pay it back, or you're not planning to pay it back immediately. The maturity is at 2 years. So after 2 years at 1%, which accrues immediately, you will need to pay back any remaining loan amount. The first payment is deferred for 6 months. This is 100% guaranteed by the SBA, no collateral, no personal guarantees, no borrower or lender fees payable to the SBA. And again, if you're working with a lending institution that has different rules, I would look for another. Now this came up as a question not really as a question, and we saw it in the comments, and it was something I wasn't aware of. So thank you very much to whoever brought this to our attention. If a business has applied for and received PPP, but applied under a misunderstanding of how funds or a misapplication of how funds should be used, the business can return the money to the lender by the 14th of May. Now, I know this is kind of a loaded comment. We're going to get into Q&A, so I'm just going to leave it there. But before last week, that date was actually May 7th. So essentially, if for some reason, there's multiple scenarios that this could happen under, but the business owner applied under a different understanding of what the rules of the program were, they received PPP and they can't really use it, and they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? They actually the SBA is requiring them, it's requesting of them to return the money by the 14th of May. So there's no imposed penalty or lack of forgiveness on that in one way or the other, but that's what they're asking for. So that's essentially tomorrow. Additional key features for full loan forgiveness eligibility. All businesses must maintain employee headcount and compensation level. Now remember, again, this money is intended to support the workforce. So this is why The SBA wants you as an employer to maintain the headcount and compensation level of employees. To determine the headcount, compare average number of full-time employees per month between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019, or alternatively, January 1st, 2020 to February 29th, 2020. Full-time employees are defined as any employee in any given month who averages at least 30 hours of service per week. In addition, for any part-time employee, this is calculated by taking all hours worked by part-time employees in a month and dividing that by 120. And we actually have on our website, which again, we'll go over at the end, we have a document that the SBA provided that gives you a better understanding of how to calculate a full loan request amount. And these calculations are, or this information is in that document. So you don't need to memorize this right now if you haven't already completed your application. The compensation level, just to clarify, may not drop more than 25% of a pre-COVID impact pay. So if you're bringing employees back or if you've retained employees and you've received PPP, the SBA and or the lender is going to be looking at if you have decreased your employee's salary by 25% or more. And if you've done so, that may compromise your full loan forgiveness. Now, this applies differently to employees that are making over 100,000. So it's only up to 100,000 that they're looking at this. But if you have an employee that you've paid, for example, 175,000, and because you can't pay them due to economic hardship, their full amount, and you drop them down to 75,000, that's much greater than a 25% increase. And now that requirement will apply to them as well. So be aware of that if you've decreased employee pay and you're going to try and seek loan forgiveness. From the day of disbursement, you should have a plan for spending the loan amount. This is really critical, and if you are on this webinar, I'm sure that some of you have had, some of you have, and some of you haven't. So that's okay. We're going to talk about best practices now, so there's no time like the present. Forgiveness depends on how the funds have been used in the 8 weeks following the disbursement. Now, here's what we know right now, and I think, again, this may change because the situation's fluid, and I'm giving you the information that I know today. Money spent after this date, as far as we know, will not be considered as far as the loan forgiveness portion. So if you're going to seek loan forgiveness, that money should be spent within the 8 weeks following the disbursement of the loan. And technically, the lending institution has 10 days after the date of approval to give you that PPP money. Remember, when you applied for the PPP loan, in case you didn't know this, you certified that money would be only spent on payroll, continuation costs of group health care benefits during periods of PTO for sick, medical, and FMLA, so all those are covered, business rent, business utilities, mortgage interest payments, but not for prepayments or principal payments, and interest payments on other debt incurred before February 15th, 2020. And the reason I mention this is because I've talked with a lot of different people, a lot of different business owners who have asked, can I use the money to spend on other things? Can I just consider this a loan? You certified when you completed your application that you would not use it on anything else. And for that reason, it would be considered fraudulent if the loan proceeds are spent on anything other than what is approved expenses. So you should know that the CARES Act established a special inspector general for pandemic recovery with broad powers to audit and investigate businesses taking loans under this program. We know they've already done that they've already responded to companies who've taken money specifically for fraudulent that they weren't qualified for, right? The publicly traded companies, they went after them. But in this case, I'm suggesting that you want to be very careful that you're spending money, you're working with your tax advisor on what is important or what is included in the covered and eligible expenses. Additional best practices: avoid commingling PPP funds with other funds. Ideally, open another account. And I've done payroll before. I think I said that last time. I know it's not easy. If you've done payroll, it's kind of a bear to set up another account. And if you can't do that, fine, I get it. But the point is, you want to make sure that you're very clearly documenting where this money has come from, and where it's going to. So make sure that you work with your CPA, your tax advisor, whoever it is, to set up the right types of accounting documentation so that you can seek full loan forgiveness. Because again, that's of course the goal. You want to keep good records and document all expenses related to PPP. Remember that for maximum debt forgiveness, ensure that no more than 25% of PPP funds are spent on business rent, business real estate, equipment interest, and business utilities. I mentioned that a moment ago. And that ensure that 75% of PPP funds are spent on paying payroll. Now, this could be retaining current staff or rehiring staff. Now, even if there is no job for the recently laid off employee to do, there does not appear to be any accommodation for granting an extension on spending the money after the 8-week period has expired. So this is a little different scenario than the one that I mentioned before, but let's say your workforce, your demand, your labor demand really has gone down, and you've received money to rehire these employees back, but there's no work for them to do. At this point, you cannot hold the money until there's work for them to do. You must rehire them, and again, that's going back to the spirit of what this program was intended to do, was to pass this money to the workforce. You must attempt to rehire them, and we'll go through questions and answers on what to do when employees refuse an offer of rehire. But let's say there isn't the demand for labor, and you don't know what to do with these employees. If you're in Ventura County now, we just, as of last night, there were a number of other businesses that became open, that Dr. Levin allowed to open following the phase 2 of California's reopen plan. And I believe Santa Barbara County will be following very quickly that path as well. My point in saying that is that if there's no job for them to do, find something for them to do. Be creative, find something for them to do. Otherwise, what you will end up doing is paying them essentially PPP as you would unemployment, meaning that they could be at home not performing work duties and still receiving a paycheck. If that's your situation, that's your situation. But if you're a business owner and you have employees, get creative. find things that they can do. For maximum debt forgiveness, staff as quickly as possible, if not immediately, again, to the same full-time equivalent employee level as the business had prior to the coronavirus disruption. Note, full-time equivalent for part-time workers means hours worked before the COVID-19 impact. To the extent that the business is unable to do so, the business should be prepared to pay the debt service on that much. So remember, again, to seek full loan forgiveness, they're going to be looking at headcount on both sides, pre-COVID, after COVID, and payroll costs, and comparing the two. If there's a difference in that, you're going to need to explain what the difference is. I've already talked about the maintain wages, so we're not going to talk about that. Failure to meet any of the above requirements may mean a portion of your loan debt will not be forgiven. Know what documentation your bank will require after 8 weeks to substantiate the loan forgiveness. Consider adding detail to your accounting system to track these costs separately, including creating a cost center with COVID designation if your accounting system supports this. If your business relies on QuickBooks, love QuickBooks, you may implement a separate account or class code to track your PPP expenses. Talk to your bank, accountant, accounting department, and payroll service provider for any additional tips on tracking expenses. But if it's not clear, all I'm saying is document, track, make sure that everything's very clear, all I's dotted, all T's crossed. Failure to meet any of the above requirements may mean a portion of your loan debt will not be forgiven. Okay, so before we get into EIDL, I'm going to go through some common questions and scenarios that we've already worked through a lot with our clients, and I know that they'll answer some of your questions. And again, we will have a Q&A at the end, so don't worry. The first question is, I have asked my employees to return to work, but they are currently receiving unemployment and have refused to return to work. So this is a common problem, and we talked about this last time. This is a challenge because under the CARES Act, the unemployment benefits were raised for, their unemployment benefits were increased, sorry, from May through the end of July for anyone receiving unemployment, whether you're self-employed or a W-2 employee. And as you know, employees can receive an additional $600 a week from the EDD through the end of July. So we're kind of in the middle of that from March to July period. And if you've had employees that you've had to lay off or furlough and they've applied for unemployment, some of them may, or most of them may have been receiving this additional $600 a week. So if you're in the hospitality sector or retail sector or some other sector where you can't compete with what the EDD is giving them, it is, I hear you, it's a challenge, and it's, you know, we knew this was going to be a challenge as they were debating this bill in the House, and here's where we are. So in reality, now if the EDD had capacity to audit everyone receiving unemployment benefits, this may not be such an issue. But when your employee is refusing work, they're actually not being completely transparent with the EDD on their current work situation. So they'll have to fill out a form either every week or bi-weekly that they have been either offered a job or they haven't been offered a job, they haven't received any additional money, or they're looking for work if they've been fully laid off. And if those three, if they answer no to those three or yes to those three, however they should be answered, then they're essentially denying that they've been offered a position or they've been offered a job from you. So they're fraudulently accepting unemployment benefits. I would caution them in that situation. I would explain to them the potential consequences. And I've heard that the EDD can, I've seen this myself, the EDD can actually go back and ask for unemployment benefits that were given that were not rightfully earned or not rightfully owed. And there's different things that the EDD can do to collect unemployment benefits that weren't rightfully owed. So you can explain to them that scenario. If you are offering them a job and they simply refuse to come back to work and you're wondering, how does this impact my loan forgiveness? There's a few things that you can do. So number one, like I said, explain to them that they're potentially forfeiting their eligibility to continue with UI benefits by denying your claim or your offer of rehire. But the Treasury Department came out specifically with a Q&A on this because it has been such a big problem. And employers may qualify for an exemption of loan forgiveness reduction. So again, it's just an exemption of loan forgiveness reduction if they offer the same hours, the same pay, and they create a written offer of employment to that employee. Send it. I recommend sending email and snail mail so you have a copy of both. Maybe even do a little read receipt or something, send it certified mail, so that you have a tangible copy of what you gave them, and then document the employee's refusal to return to work. So that can either be done over email or in any way that you can. Make sure that you keep that documentation, and preferably it would be written, because when you go back to seek loan forgiveness, when you meet with your lender, you're going to need to show that to them, so you can explain why so-and-so wasn't offered or didn't return back to work, why David refused to come back to work. And what I'd also do, and I didn't write here, is keep a spreadsheet of, you offered David a job back in 2014, he worked until March of 2020, you let him go because of COVID, then you got your PPP, and then you offered him his job back, and then next date he refused. Make sure that you keep that very clearly together so that you can document your employment history with those individuals that refuse to come back to work. Okay, number 3, can you hire new employees during the 8-week period following funding of PPP loan, or does it need to be employees that were paid before? You can bring back employees. This, again, remember, this is for employees that were laid off, or you may hire new employees. So let's say David, sorry, David, I'm picking on you. I don't know anyone named David who hasn't returned to work. But if David does not want to come back to work, you can go and advertise for another the same position and hire Sam. So you can do that if you would like. If you normally pay twice per month and there's still money left during the 8-week period, can you pay employees a special payroll to get it all before the 8-week loan forgiveness period ends? Our recommendation is to be very careful about this, about making extra payments, as this could cause the SBA to look into fraudulent use. So this is important. You don't want to look like all of a sudden there's a spike in pay for someone, or yeah, I'm not talking necessarily about planned increases, but we have guidance on that too. Just be careful about that. My bank has not given me any instructions on how forgiveness will be applied. So we've heard this from several of you. Check back with your bank. There may be instructions now. Know that the SBA has not given, to our knowledge, lending institutions instructions on how this forgiveness will roll out. If the SBA will be sending people down, if the bank will be required to look at to determine complete loan forgiveness, or if they're going to be hiring a third party to do that. We don't know that scenario yet. So just know that, again, this is still fluid. I'm a sole proprietor. I applied for a PPP loan and they said I wasn't eligible. Okay, sole props are eligible for PPP, but if your net profit for 2019 was 0, then you're not eligible to apply because you're showing I had a 0. Hey, I didn't make anything, right? So there's nothing really to draw from. And that's the SBA rules there. Number 8, I would like to find out how to calculate my maximum loan amount. Okay, so you can find how to calculate maximum loan amounts by business type on our webpage, edcollaborative.com/COVID-19. And I'll go over that at the end too, so you have that. I'm an LLC owner. How do I calculate my PPP maximum loan amount? Again, so in these situations, the title says it all. You can calculate your maximum loan amount by business type, and that information is on our webpage. Should payments be made to an independent contractor, sole proprietor, or sole proprietor be included in calculations of the eligible borrower's payroll costs? The answer there is firmly no, because sole proprietors and independent contractors are eligible to apply on their own for this program. So according to the federal government, that just looks like double dipping. You're not going to apply on behalf of your sole proprietor or your contractor. They will need to do this on their own. Number 11, my PPP was based on 2019 average payroll. For reasons having nothing to do with COVID, my workforce is reduced this year. Therefore, I have more PPP money than I expect to be able to spend for approved expenses. What can I do to use up the full PPP loan in the 8 weeks? Can I pay myself more as a business owner and a W-2 employee of my own company? Can I give my employees a bonus? Can I prepay expenses like rent? We are going to recommend that you check again with your lender. Be very careful with paying additional salary and bonuses to yourself, and expenses that are not incurred in the 8-week period following the date of disbursement are not permitted. Now, there is a question outstanding on whether those 8 weeks, whether it's based on a cash or accrual basis. So we have different experts telling us different things there. So what I'm going to recommend is that you go back to your lender and clarify with them. Okay, so lastly, we're going to talk about the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you didn't receive it, the SBA right now is only accepting, they're processing applications that have already been received on a first come, first served basis. But at this point, they're only accepting applications for agricultural based businesses. So that being said, personally, I don't think that the EIDL loan application portal is going to open again. That's my personal thought. It could change because the federal government doesn't answer to me, but I think that this probably is it for EIDL. So if you don't know, it's up to 2 million, up to 30-year terms. And what we are seeing, what I will say, what we are seeing with our clients is that they're getting longer terms. During the Thomas fire and Hawolsey fire, we had clients that were being given 15-year terms on their loans, and I haven't even heard of one that any client that I've been working with that's less than 30 years. So that's better news. They're eligible for businesses, faith-based organizations, etc. And it includes that upfront payment of a $10,000 grant for successful applicants. I use the word grant there, but it's a forgivable. It's a forgivable. Well, I'll just use the word grant for now. These loans may be used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and I can't see because this thing keeps coming up, and other bills. Now, notice that if you received EIDL and PPP, they can be used for the same thing. So again, this goes back to your accounting. Make sure that you're not using EIDL to pay for payroll when you have PPP money. When you have PPP money, you need to stop using EIDL if that's been your scenario and start using PPP. Or maybe you received PPP and you haven't yet received your EIDL disbursement. I know that's the case scenario for a lot of people. Start using your PPP and hope that in 2 months that EIDL money is in your account, and we're all hoping that that's the way this is going to roll out. The SBA has implemented automatic payment deferments on previous EIDLs. So if you're in Ventura County or Santa Barbara County, I'm sure you're very familiar with this program. This was a standard economic injury disaster loan. The only difference was that up to $10,000 that was given as a cash advance. So what is important to note here is that if you pay by check your EIDL loan, and this is for previous EIDLs, not current, but if you pay by check and you pay every month, you do not need to request deferment. You should be receiving statements from the SBA saying you don't owe anything this month. But for people who have set up automatic payments with their bank, or in whatever way they set up automatic payments, you will need to contact the SBA and request that deferment. So as questions come up a few times with clients who have had automatic payments with the SBA, and they're deferred all the way until December 31st, 2020. If you have applied and are approved for EIDL, this is important. If you've applied and approved for EIDL, you don't have to accept the money. And I want to be really clear about that because there's been some confusion there. You don't have to accept it. If you've been offered $150,000, you don't have to take 150. You can take 75, or you can take 50,000. You can take what you need, or you can leave it on the table. And if you received an EIDL advance, that's what I should have called it before, an advance versus a grant, you can actually just take that and refuse the rest of the loan. And for those of you who are wondering, that advance was determined, or is determined, based on the number of employees that you have at the time of application. So if you have 10 employees, then you receive $10,000. But it seems that if you've had 6 employees, you receive $6,000. If you're a sole proprietor and it's only you receive $1,000. So we have heard, and it's been confirmed, that has been based on employee count. So commonly asked questions for EIDL, and then we'll get into your questions. I have received, I think, my EIDL advance up to $10,000. What do I do? I say I think because we know that the SBA is completely backlogged, and their ability to respond immediately or keep up with the money that's being dispersed and the communication that is meant to be released at the time of disbursement. So hold on one second. Sorry, I just had a random technical issue. So, so some of our clients have received, you know, $2,000 or $10,000 in their account, and they ask me like, Claire, what is this? What do I do with this? And most of the time I'm saying, yes, I think that's your EIDL loan. I think that's your EIDL advance, but they haven't received a letter from the SBA clarifying that. So I'm 99% sure it's your EIDL advance, but because who else is just depositing money into your bank account right now, unless you have a wealthy relative. But honestly, it would be ideal if the SBA chose to send out their communication to clarify why that money is getting deposited or what it's for. But right now, if it's $10,000 or less, we believe that it is the EIDL advance, but you also need to check on that. When will I receive notice of my loan? Well, the EDs, I'm changing this because we've been told it's 3 to 4 weeks, but it's been 6 to 7 weeks, and we have clients that still haven't received notice of their loans. So I'm really sorry if you're in that position. And really, we talk with clients all the time who are in this position and don't know what to do. And at this point, we cannot look up loans or loan status. And I think that 3 to 4 weeks measurement of time was aspirational at best. So I think we're looking at, it could be up to 2 months before some people have heard. Is it okay to apply for and receive both PPP and EIDL? Yes. And again, we've worked through a number of scenarios where I think that's been clear. Yes, you can. Just be sure to use it for different expenses. Okay. Additional services. Remember, I work again for the Economic Development Collaborative. We host the Small Business Development Center that serves Ventura and Santa Barbara County. And we have 30 consultants that are able to meet with you at no cost. We are federally funded and also partly privately funded. And we have about 30 consultants with every area of business expertise. And right now we're really working with clients on refining their business models, learning again how to manage money that's coming their way, whether it's through additional loan capital or through EIDL or PPP. We also have a loan fund that I will talk about in a moment, human resources, legal, etc. Working with clients in dealing with landlord issues and rebranding and all of that. It's all free to you, no cost whatsoever. You can find us online at edcollaborative.com. And if you receive this, if you're on this webinar, you probably already know our email address. But in order to speak to an advisor, I will clarify that in a moment how you do that. So our disaster loan fund options, we have 2 locally, and mentioning ours first, we have a $5,000 to $50,000 loan fund available through our disaster loan fund, 4.25% interest, 48-month term, 3 months interest only. So if you're interested in that, we're looking for clients that are currently and have been in business, they've retained their employees, and they have cash flow. So this is a private capital loan fund. That's why we have to be careful with the risk that we incur in lending that money. We are not an SBA lender. So I just want to clarify that. We are not an SBA lender. Women's Economic Ventures is continuing to release loans up to $10,000. And that's at 4.5% interest and 36-month repayment term. And they have over $1 million loan fund. And I know they've been working their tail off to get some of those loans out. They are still accepting applications, so please connect with them. So to access our business resource guide and additional information that when this any information on disaster or disruption resources becomes available, you can visit our webpage at edcollaborative.com/COVID-19, and it's right there under the business resources page. You can see the little arrow, and then at the bottom, or at the top, I should say, we have 2 guides in red in Spanish and English that are updated almost daily with current information. And please be sure to check out that page. There's a lot of content on there, and it may answer some of your questions. We also have another section that is an overview on this page of PPP versus EIDL, so you can see a side-by-side comparison and look at all the details. So that would be maybe helpful to look at after this webinar. So again, my name is Clare Briglio. I'm the Communications and Business Disruption Resource Director for No Cost Consulting. Here's that number again, 805-409-9159. And I'm going to open it up to Q&A. And I'm going to ask, let's see here. Oops. I'm going to ask for my lovely Juliana Ramirez, who's one of our favorite and best financial advisors. She's going to join me to answer questions that you all may have, and I don't see a ton in the Q&A. I'm frankly shocked.
I think Emily has been, or sorry, whoever's been managing Q&A has been doing a great job.
Yeah,
Wow.
Claire, I'm doing all your work for you. I answered 39 questions.
I know.
So, and I just want to be super clear with everybody. Claire and Juliana are way, 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 way smarter than me. So if I gave you information that conflicts with what they tell you, absolutely they are right. And I'm sorry, we're all doing our very best with this very convoluted information that changes 7 times a day. So let's get started. What organizations are still accepting PPP applications? Also, does accepting PPP negate my unemployment insurance benefits acceptance?
Okay, I'm going to address that quickly, and then I will let Juliana jump in. So PPP, if you live in Montecito, or you don't have to live in Montecito, what am I talking about? Santa Barbara County or Ventura County, you can apply at Montecito Bank and Trust for a PPP loan. They are accepting applications for non-clients right now. You don't have to be a current client of the bank. Umpqua Bank, we know, is also accepting applications, but you have to be a current bank member. And Cabbage and Lendio and PayPal are all still accepting applications. Juliana, is there any lender I'm missing?
Not that I can think of, but I can tell you something that I experienced this week with Cabbage.
Yes.
I assisted a client with applying on Monday, and they got the funds today. So that was how quickly it was processed, and Cabbage is not charging a fee, meaning it's strictly PPP, and since it is an SBA loan, it's there's no fees associated. So I know that Cabbage is usually, charges a fee for lending money, but this is a PPP, so there's no fees. And I was very impressed with how quickly it was. Obviously, you have to have your paperwork in a row.
That's really good. Jerry says he used Square. She used Square.
I used PayPal and I had the same experience. I got next day approval and a deposit the day after. But just make sure that your lender is not charging you a fee. Yeah. There should not be a fee. And if someone is charging you a fee, you need to go somewhere else.
Right.
Okay, so we have a couple questions about the overlay of PPP and PUA. I'm a sole proprietor and applied for PPP. I did not qualify for the first wave of funding, so I applied for PUA at the end of April. Then I was approved for PPP and unemployment. I did not know that I would be funded for both. Do I return the PPP or cancel unemployment?
Well, remember your PPP is meant to cover for essentially 2 months. And if I were in your position as a sole proprietor and I had a very clear understanding of what my lender was going to look for in terms of loan forgiveness, it's just me, right? Sole proprietor, it should be very simple and straightforward. I would take the PPP first, and then I would go back and take PUA if I needed it. But again, I don't know your financial situation, and if you kind of have to do the math, because we're almost about 8 weeks out from July, right? Yeah, we are kind of almost 6 weeks out from July. So they,
so you may be able to cancel your PUA and accept PPP for now, and then refile for PUA after PPP runs out?
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, Megan. So Megan Cullen is actually on the line too. She's one of our resident experts in all things EDD. She says they would have to claim the PPP on their weekly certification, so they would not get the PUA. So sorry if that wasn't clear. That is what I would do. But what Megan, I guess maybe you can help us understand too. If we accept the PPP, can she not go back and claim or reapply for PUA at the end of PPP? That's what. Yes, she can. Okay, so you can do both, and that is what we've been advising people actually from the beginning. So thank you, Megan, for confirming that information was correct.
Just be clear that when we're saying that, yes, you can apply for both, it's one or the other at any given time. So yes, you can do PPP, but not PUA during PPP. You end with PPP, now you can start again with PUA. Like, it's making sure that it's not the two at the same time.
Great. Can you let some of the money convert to a loan and then continue to use it for salaries, healthcare, and other certified uses?
You know what, it is a loan, but I would recommend, and jump in, Juliana, if you would like, I would recommend that you go back and talk to your lender, because if you're choosing to hold on, if you're going back into that meeting and you have a loan forgiveness meeting and you say, well, I only used X amount and I'm going to hold on to this 50,000, for example, I just want to let you know that I'm going to hold on to this and we can treat it as a loan. No, it's going to be at 1% interest, starts immediately, and it matures in 2 years. So I don't see a challenge with that, but I think it has to be a conversation between you and your lender.
All right. I understood the EIDL grant would reduce the amount of PPP loan forgiveness. Is that correct?
I'll let Juliana answer that one.
Yes, I know that this has been a little bit of a gray, but I did find that information right from that final rule from the SBA. And so refinancing an SBA EIDL loan made between January 31st and April 3rd. If you receive an SBA EIDL loan from January 31st to April 3rd, you can apply for a PPP loan. If your EIDL loan was not used for payroll costs, it does not affect your eligibility for a PPP loan. If your EIDL loan was used for payroll costs, your PPP loan must be used to refinance your EIDL loan, and proceeds from any advance up to the $10,000 on the EIDL loan will be deducted from the loan forgiveness amount on the PPP loan. It's very clear there that yes, if you received any advance, it'll be reduced from your forgivable amount, from the forgiveness amount.
If you use it for payroll.
If you use that for payroll, yes.
So if I use my EIDL cash advance to pay something else, to pay rent or my cell phone bill or whatever, then that wouldn't get deducted out of.
No, I'm sorry. No, it is the $10,000 will be deducted from your loan forgiveness, because again, you are asking for, let's say, the full forgiveness. It'll be deducted from that forgiveness.
Thank you. Clear as mud, right, guys?
Totally.
Do I have to keep employees on payroll after paying them for the 8 weeks of PPP?
So there's no enforcement policy that says that you have to. If you can no longer afford to, they would be laid off or furloughed or back on unemployment if that's your scenario.
Great. And everyone, please make sure you look at the questions that we've already answered, because we've got a lot of duplicates. So we may have already answered your question. So one of these that we've already answered, we've gotten a ton of questions about what for PPP, what is and what isn't forgiven. And the answer is you have to talk to your lender. And I put this in the chat. The 3 things that you need to ask your lender for is an exact list of what will or won't be forgiven. For example, my lender is allowing credit card interest debt, and not every lender is allowing that. So you have to ask them for their list of approved expenses. You have to ask them when you should come back to request forgiveness and how you should do that and what form of documentation they want you to use. Anything else on that list?
I think, oh, Megan's asking for the list again.
So my 3 things on the list are the list of approved expenses, how and when you should come back to ask for forgiveness, and what format of documentation they want. Like, do they have a specific form or an Excel sheet, and what receipts do they want you to keep and all that stuff?
Yeah, that's a pretty good list. I want to go back though to the question, Juliana. I want to go back to the question where someone in this scenario, someone you know, has to lay off their employees after the 8 weeks of receiving PPP and they're back on unemployment. Are there any consequences to loan forgiveness, complete loan forgiveness, if that is the case?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Obviously, it is just the 8-week period that they are considering for that loan forgiveness. So there's no rule about, you know, but you have to keep these employees, you know, employed after, because
Okay.
this you might not be able to. And then what are you going to do there?
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
We are a semi-monthly payroll payer. Since the 8-week start from the day of funding, the payroll payments do not fall exactly on these dates. How do you report the payment?
Juliana.
Keep in mind that they're going to ask for records, and I do have a couple of banks that have already provided a list of those documents. So if you contact SBDC and ask them to speak with me, I can share that information. But they are asking for copies of payroll tax reports filed with the IRS, such as your 941s, DE9s, and your 940. So obviously, those forms are completed on a cash basis, meaning on the pay date. So that's going to be really important for you to understand that, you know, it's going to be based on what's paid in that period, because that's what's going to be proven on with the 941s and the D9s. So, you know, it is being payroll is treated more on a cash basis than an accrual basis. So that's important to note. Obviously, they're going to ask for payroll reports for each pay period of the 8-week period following the origination date of the loan. So understand that if your payroll report, your pay that falls out of the 8-week, then that would not be able to be counted in that 8-week period.
Thank you. I want to be sensitive of our time because we have about, what do we have? We have 32 minutes left and we have 23 questions.
24 now. So my lovely team on the back, if you can go through and clear out the ones that we've already answered, that'll help us move through this. Regarding EIDL, I have not received the advance, but did receive the loan offer. If I accept, will the first up to 10,000 still be forgivable?
Okay, so that's interesting. I wonder what date when you applied for it.
So Sean, chat us and let us know what date you applied, because if it was before what date, Claire?
I don't remember.
March something.
Yeah, it was like March 31st or March 28th. That could have been, did you apply via long form or short form? Applied within the first couple of days, it became available. Okay, so Sean, at that point, the EIDL loan was not, the EIDL advance was not part of that application, which is why they required people to reapply on the new site. So I wonder if you could call the SBA, you know, when you have a lot of time, but call them and see if there's any way you can request in advance, because I don't know that answer, unless Juliana, you have another idea.
No, I don't know.
All right. Can I just bring back the employees I need for work right now and let the other employees stay on unemployment? Will only a portion be forgiven? Will they put the difference to your loan, or will they take it back?
Well, I would ask why you wouldn't bring back your full workforce.
Great.
Because
You don't have a name there, but Galaxy S9 Plus, maybe chat us, because the point of PPP is to get people off unemployment. So is there any work you could find for them to do to use that PPP money? Couple questions on this about timing from our friends at the SBA. I applied for EIDL in March and haven't heard anything. Any way to follow up with them?
You can call their service number, which I don't have memorized. Juliana, you may have it.
I might be able to post it. Just
Okay. Thank you.
Questions.
So you can, we'll post the service number on the call center number. I know it's not easy to get a hold of the SBA agent, I'm sorry, but that would be the best route I would recommend. Or you can email them. But I've heard it takes a long time to receive a response via email as well.
Also, to the person who didn't receive the EIDL advance, when I received mine, I got no notification. It was just a deposit in my bank account. So it's worth looking into your bank account just to double check that they didn't sneak some money in there. I have an LLC and I'm a member. I wasn't on the payroll before. Can I be on the payroll now?
She's a member? They're a member?
A member of the LLC.
Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry, I was thinking bank. Thank you. The number for the economic injury disaster loan or call center is on the screen now, or in the chat now. Juliana, did you hear that question?
No, do you mind repeating the question? Sorry, I was looking for the number.
Thank you very much.
I have an LLC and I'm a member of that LLC. I wasn't on the payroll before. Can I be on the payroll now?
Well, as an LLC, are you filing as an S corp? Right? Because if you didn't elect to file as an S corp, then you shouldn't be on payroll as an LLC, right? It really depends on how your business is structured. So you would need to double check with your tax accountant to see, if you should. I mean, LLCs can be treated as partners, partnerships, which is kind of like a sole proprietor. So therefore, you wouldn't be on payroll. So double check how you're filing. Normally, again, LLCs, unless they're treated as an S corp, they usually don't have their members under payroll. So double check how you're structured.
Great. And Galaxy S9 Plus, I think we just answered your follow-up question. So if you need more clarification, repost it. We hired a new employee to replace one that had left. Then that previous employee came back. Can I include the additional employees in my wages for the total I report for forgiveness?
I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the questions that keep coming up in the chat. If you have a question, if you could put it in the Q&A, that would be great.
All right, restating the question.
Terry, if you can do that, because I keep getting a pop-up, so I didn't hear the question. I'm back.
We hired a new employee to replace the one that had left, and then that previous employee came back. Can we include both employees in the total for PPP?
I see. Well, I think there's going to be some explaining to do about why the payroll increased. But you should be able to have, and communicate with your lender, clarify if this was the rehire or the refusal of hire, and then they chose to come back and I had already hired someone else. So whatever that loan amount was for, I don't see that being compromised as you will have more payroll. It sounds like you'll have probably a higher payroll expense than you did before, but that would need to be a clear communication with your lender.
Great. The PPP was deposited into our business account. If we put the PPP amount into another account, can we continue to pay payroll and expenses from our business account and then transfer the money from PPP account to business account as it's spent?
Oh, I see. Okay, so the extra account is an ideal world scenario that your all those expenses and your payroll are coming out of that one account. So Juliana, do you have anything to add to this question?
No, I mean, there's just make sure that you're tracking those expenses. Again, regardless of where the money's being paid out of, what you're gonna need to prove is how you that you paid those expenses. It's not established that it has to be proved that you paid them out of a particular account. It established that you just need to prove those expenses with, again, reports, payroll reports, or canceled checks and things like that. So I would say, depending on what type of accounting system you're using, if you're using QuickBooks has classes. You mentioned that on one of the slides. You can implement a class and then label all of those transactions with a class, or designate, PPP category expense account. Although I would prefer the class, that way you can pull a P&L by itself under that class.
And Paul, I'm in the same situation. And so the way I'm handling it, all my PPP is in a separate savings account. And then the same day or the day after an approved expense comes out of my checking, I replace the money from PPP savings into my business checking. And so it's exact one-to-one, and I try to do them within a day of each other. So the transactions look pretty clear, and I document it on an Excel spreadsheet. And in terms of payroll, and Laura, this is the answer to your question, what portion of payroll taxes are or are not covered with PPP? So correct me if I'm wrong, it's state and local taxes are covered, federal are not. And so after each payroll, I ask my payroll company for a report of what is allowed under PPP. And then my payroll comes out of my checking account, and I put the exact amount back into my checking account from my PPP account.
Yes, and what I would just clarify on the payroll taxes, it is the employer portion of California, or in this case, California local. That is what is allowed.
Thank you. I'm still confused by the date. Everyone's confused about everything. Don't worry about it. I'm still confused by the date when you must hire back employees under PPP. I need to spend all the PPP money by June 17th, but it says I can rehire by June 30th. So can I rehire on June 1st, for example, as long as I could use all the PPP by June 17th?
Well, you're supposed to use all the money within 8 weeks,
From
right?
Disbursement, yes.
Of disbursement. So regardless of date, you need to start there. When did you get the money? Can you rehire and use all that payroll expense within that 8 weeks, starting on that date? That's the date that I would use.
Great. Can you start your payroll and weekly paychecks beginning in the 3rd week of your 8-week period, and then pay from week 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? We just received our, yeah.
I think this is the same answer, right?
Yes, I think as long as you're spending the money within the 8-week period, remember, what is your 941 and D9 going to show? That's going to be your proof of what you're paying, right? So just remember that.
And Juliana, if people here are like me and those numbers don't mean anything to them, is the right move to talk to your CPA or your bookkeeper, or call EDC and talk to you?
All of those. Either or all. Yes, because, again, when you have employees, just know, when you have employees, there are quarterly returns that you're supposed to file. And that's what your payroll provider prepares for you, or your bookkeeper, or if you use your tax accountant for that, they help you with these quarterly reports that you are preparing or filing with IRS and the state. So when we're talking about your 941, that's your federal. And yes, when we're talking about D9, that's your state. And yes, I would say, if it's not clear, go to either or all of them.
Great. Can the PPP loan be used for payment of workers' comp during the 8-week period?
I thought workers' comp is included, Juliana.
Workers' comp is not, because I mean, I know a lot of people see workers' comp as a payroll expense.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's not covered under these expenses, and it's very clear on SBA what's included on payroll costs. So again, if you're not clear, contact us and we'll go through that in detail with you. We'll show you exactly where on the SBA document that is stated.
Yes, contact Juliana.
Well, I mean, SBDC.
Thank you. Yeah.
I am sending emails to my business banker on a daily basis asking how to return the PPP money. My concern is that I don't want to incur a penalty if I don't return the money by 5/14. The date they have determined is the final date to return the money without penalty.
So why are they returning the money?
Paula, give us some clarification. My assumption is that you don't need all the money and 5/14 was the end of your 8 weeks, but chat me some more clarification and we'll come back to you.
I think they need to talk to their lender. I mean, talk to your lender first and figure out.
You're not getting through to the lender.
Oh, they're not
sending an email to my banker on a daily basis. So,
oh, sorry, I thought you said CPA. Sorry.
You know, document it, save everything, document, and then if you do get a penalty, you can say, here are the 17 emails I sent you. I don't know what you want me to do.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Just a comment, Paula had posted an earlier question that she received PPP from 2 different lenders.
Ooh.
And that's why she needs to return.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Brianne. And I think what I suggested to Paula is don't spend the second PPP, just hold on to it and document everything and then give it back when you get a hold of your banker. Can we pay our employees for time they had to take off before we receive PPP? For instance, if they have the day off, can I pay them for 8 hours to help make up for the hours they lost in March and April?
Juliana.
If this is what you would normally do, so if you gave someone a day off and they would normally get this benefit of, time paid off, but now you're paying them because you couldn't pay them back then yes. But if this is not normally what you do, you cannot just go and say, oh, I'm going to pay you just so that I can use this money. Does that make sense?
Yep. I have 2 sales consultants that make over 100,000 per year. We submitted them at the max of 100,000, but with commission, they will make more than that average. How do I break that down for forgiveness?
Contact us. We can go more into detail.
Thank you. You need to talk with
That's a little bit more detailed.
Brianne, why don't you repost the phone number in the chat? Can part of the PPP be used to pay payroll and say 30% used as refunds to customers? Would the 70% of PPP that is used for payroll be forgiven?
If you're using, and you might have missed the slide that I went through that clarified the certification that you committed to, that money would only be used for approved expenses, and refunds to customers was not on that approved expense list. I would not be trying to do that. It sounds like you're trying to use the PPP as a general loan. So your loan forgiveness, in my estimation, would be dramatically compromised by any use of funds for different reasons.
Thank you. The 25% used for utilities, is it only the cost of utilities for the 8-week period, or does it go back? And Terry, so I guess this goes back to, is it accrual or is it cash? Juliana, it sounds like we think for payroll, it's on a cash basis, but for the other expenses, do we think that will be cash or accrual?
So if you were not able to pay for these expenses and now you are paying those now, right? You can, because you're not really, you weren't able to pay them, and that's the purpose of PPP, right? So you can continue operation. Same thing with payroll. If you were not able to pay your employees, right? Because remember, it does go retroactive from February 15th, which means you had employees that you needed to pay and you couldn't pay them, and now you have the money because that's what the PPP is intended for. Now you can pay them, right? Same thing for expenses. You weren't able to pay those expenses. And a perfect example is for those that were able to get some concession from their renter or their landlord. They didn't pay rent for April, let's say, or even May. Now they've got the money. Now they can go ahead and pay that, and that would be included because that's exactly the intention of this PPP loan.
Great. So this is a follow-up. Should I hire everybody back, even if my business is closed, pay them, pay workers' comp on them, and then lay them off again when the 8 weeks expires?
So is the business closed permanently?
Galaxy S9 Plus, give us a chat and let us know.
And is this the question coming from the same person?
I'm
Multiple.
assuming it's just the device name, not a person's name, so I can't.
Oh, okay.
But I'm assuming.
Yeah, it sounds like they probably need to speak to an advisor.
Yeah, so Galaxy S9 Plus, give that phone number a call that's in the chat, and speak maybe with Juliana or another financial advisor.
Mm-hmm.
What if you receive the EIDL money after 4/1? Is that $10,000 still deducted from the PPP money?
Juliana.
I mean, I think I read it, yes. Remember that that $10,000 grant is going to be reduced from your forgivable amount and your forgiveness amount. So
Great. We applied on the short form, got confirmation, never got an advance, never have been contacted. Can I still get an EIDL loan? That sounds fun.
Yeah, so we know that they're still going through loan applications and processing them on a first come, first served basis. So depending on when you applied, it sounds like you're still in the queue and are still kind of in limbo, which I'm sorry. But we, you know, that scenario is not uncommon. I think you're just gonna have to give it some more time.
So I have a few questions and I don't understand what's in the question. So I'm going to read it and Juliana's going to know the answer. We use a PEO company. They process our payroll. We use our FEIN, but the file forms 940 to 941. We don't have W-3 and our WC rates are lower because they absorb our employees. How about WC and the fee we pay to the PEO company? Is that processed our payroll? Can I include WC in that fee?
that's a complicated question.
Call Juliana.
Please contact us. I mean, there's obviously more to the story. So we need to see the whole story. So to be able to answer that correctly.
All right, give that phone number a call and ask for a meeting with Juliana. I received the EIDL grant after April 3rd and have not used it for payroll. Do I need to deduct the EIDL grant amount from the PPP?
I'm not sure how, without looking at what you have used it on, I don't know. Juliana, what would you say?
Once again, your grant, that advance would be reduced or deducted from your loan, from the amount that you're forgiven. So let's just say you got a PPP loan for $20,000 and you got a $2,000 grant, right? When you come to forgiveness, you would only be asking for $18,000 forgiveness, right? Does that make sense? Because you already got the $2,000, right? Advance. That advance is already there. Did I?
Allison, if it makes sense? If it doesn't make sense, re-ask your question for more clarification.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say this out loud so I remember it too. So what she needs to do is make sure that she's not spending the EIDL loan and the PPP full amount. It needs to be reduced by whatever EIDL grant, EIDL advance. She needs to reduce the amount she's spending by the EIDL advance on the PPP side.
Thank you. Today, SBA announced a new safe harbor in FAQ number 46 for PP recipients are non-public where the PPP is less than 2 million.
I believe that's in the Treasury's Q&As too. Is that there? Or it was I was reading that yesterday. So I don't have full knowledge of that. I think you're going to have to call in, unless Juliana knows off the top of her head, you're going to have to call in and talk with one of our advisors about that.
No, and that's what I wanted to say. You know, we do see a lot of these questions because obviously it's not that clear. Again, depending on your situation, it applies a bit different, or again, we need to see at the whole picture. So this is where you really have to take advantage of services, you know, that are for free. They're available for free. You may not be able to get in, let's say, within the same day, but you'll be able to talk to someone that can look at your entire situation and help you, you know, navigate how this PPP loan or how the EIDL or how the grants apply to you and your business and your situation and the numbers and the amounts. I've been able to help some of the clients just, you know, look at different scenarios just based on the information that they're giving me, the information that's available, and the information that the bank might potentially request. So all of that plays into account of how you use and make those decisions. I think the most important is if you don't have someone that's walking you by the hand or what is walking with you, this is where you can take advantage of SBDC.
Great. Have estimated tax payments deadline been delayed for the next June payment?
Have estimated tax deadline?
Payments been delayed for the June payment?
Not that I'm aware of. What I would say is which estimated payment, the income tax payment, or is it the business
tax?
payroll? What type of? I mean, I'm guessing it's the individual tax payments, right? Is that what they're?
I'm not sure. Give us some more clarification. Can I pay employees not on unemployment, sick pay, if I don't have work for them to do? I would rather give the money to employees than back to the bank. What about planned raises? Are those okay? Advice to get answers from B of A. Can I use EIDL for credit card payments?
If Megan was still on, I would encourage you to talk to Megan and Juliana if she has time. It sounds like you want to work through multiple scenarios. So for sake of time, I'd pass those questions to a financial advisor.
Yep. We had 2/3 of our staff go on unemployment before getting the PPP loan. They have been getting payments, although we have tried to keep them busy with field work and office work. If the employees are still receiving EDD money, and we are also using PPP to pay average salary, will that impact our loan forgiveness?
I don't understand when they're using PPP to pay what salary?
To pay average salary. So Alan, what I think you mean is you had your employees go on work reduction PUA, and you're still paying them a little bit to do some work, and then you want to use PPP to pay the remainder to bring their salaries back up to where they were before they went on unemployment. That to me sounds like you might be double dipping the funds. So again, call that hotline and schedule a meeting, because we definitely don't want to accidentally double dip those funds.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The funds not covered under PPP for payroll costs, best practice, please clarify. Ask payroll provider for a report of expenses not covered, repay the expenses not covered from the business account into the dedicated PPP bank account. So Allison, I'm sorry this was confusing. What I'm doing is every time we run payroll, I'm asking my payroll provider to give me a report of only the expenses that are approved under PPP. So if my payroll is $5,000, the approved expenses may be only $4,000. So the $5,000 of payroll comes out of my checking account, and then I, from my PPP account, transfer $4,000, which was the approved amount, from my PPP to my checking account. So I hope that makes sense. The GM is paid out of the hotel checkbook under contracted manager posting, but his wage is not sent to our payroll accountant. He is on salary and he was not paid since February. Can his back pay be included in the payroll expense, since it will be paid during the 8 weeks for PPP? I have a manager, me, that has not been paid since March. Can my back pay be considered in the PPP?
Juliana, I would have said yes. Is there?
Right. Yes, you can, because again, If you weren't able to pay them, now you are because that's where you got the loan.
Please hold, my dog was barking. If we receive PPP funds on the 11th, when should I start tracking expenses in payroll that's dated from the 3rd to the 16th, or not start till payroll the 17th through the 30th?
So again, it's based on pay date, not based on pay period. So it's whatever, if you said, did they say the 11th?
11th.
The 11th, so you just count 8 weeks from the 11th, and anything that's paid, right, paid dated that day, you know, and within those 8 weeks is what you would consider. So it doesn't matter on the pay period. You know, you might have, you know, ended your pay period on the 10th and paid it on the 13th or the 15th. That's okay, because you are paying it within those 8 weeks.
Great. Can EIDL be used for other business expenses? Would it not be forgiven? So let's clarify a little bit the difference between the EIDL advance versus the EIDL loan, and what is forgiven, what's not, and what's approved expenses under EIDL.
Okay, we can talk about that briefly. I'm looking at how many questions we have left. Remember that
advance is a grant that you don't need to pay back under any circumstances.
that's correct.
And are there any restrictions on what you can use the EIDL loan for?
Well, the eligible expenses are listed, you know, different operating expenses, payroll, rent, utilities. It's very similar to PPP. Supplies.
General business expenses.
General business expenses. Yeah.
However, if I got a $5,000 advance and a $20,000 loan, that $20,000 is not forgivable. It's a loan. That $5,000 is automatically forgiven and it's considered a grant.
Correct.
Right.
Are payroll taxes all credited for payroll expense?
All credited.
I don't know that answer.
I think you're asking.
I don't understand the question.
Yeah, what payroll taxes are forgivable under PPP? So Juliana, do you know that answer? What portion of payroll taxes are forgivable under PPP?
So like I said, it includes your state, the employer contribution of a state employer taxes. So again, in this case, employment training tax and unemployment California tax, right? Your ATT and SUI. That is what is part of the expenses.
Great. So clarification, if I got $10,000 from PPP and $3,000 EIDL advance, am I only needing to request PPP forgiveness for $7,000, which means 75% of $7,000 is $5,250 on payroll, and the other 25% on qualified expenses. Is that correct? So is the 75-25 calculated on the total PPP amount or on the amount after it's been reduced by your EIDL advance?
I would start with the amount that it's been reduced by the EIDL advance. So he's received 7,000 or 4,000, sorry, 3,000 advance, 7,000 PPP.
3,000 advance, 10,000 PPP, which leaves 7,000 available to be forgiven.
I see. Juliana,
And you would be forgiven. So if you've been given the advance of $3,000, right? That will be reduced from that forgivable amount. So again, if you were given $10,000 for PPP and $3,000 from advance, now you've got to, let's say, consider $7,000 that needs to be used for those expenses.
Great. All right, and it is 2:00, people. We answered 92 questions. We've got 6 left. We're gonna do this again next week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being patient with us. and just hold on there. We're in this with you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Right,
Juliana, team, and everyone who participated. I appreciate it. And if you would like to come back next week, you are more than welcome. Thanks so much and have a great afternoon. Anything else, Emily?
No, hang in there, guys. We're here with you.
Bye.